Movie versus play debate.
Opening statements. Hannah.
When looking upon the play version of Midsummer Night's Dream, it is stronger in interpretation, accuracy, and aesthetic appeal when performing Shakespeare's original intent of the production.
Jen.
When looking at multiple versions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, the movie versions are perfectly capable of capturing and portraying the elements that are intended for a theater production. Elements such as interpretation, accuracy, and aesthetic appeal.
Main point on interpretation. Jen.
Alright. In the play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, the small play, Pyramus and Thisbe, is performed by the townspeople. The actors interpret the characters and the plot of Pyramus and Thisbe as being scary. Therefore, they make their interpretation of the characters to be harmless and welcoming by letting the audience know that they are just actors. For example, the townsperson Snug, dressed as a lion, tells the audience, "You ladies, you whose gentle hearts do fear the smallest monstrous mouse that creeps on floor, may now perchance both quake and tremble here, when lion rough in wildest rage doth roar. Then know that I, a Snug the joiner, am a lion fell, nor else no lion's dam." Act 5, Scene 1. Therefore, these characters are understood by the audience as being the actors that play them. The Beatles, in their short film, Pyramus and Thisbe, interpret the characters of the play in the same way, wearing costumes that show their faces. Therefore, they're giving their audience the same effect that is achieved in A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Hannah. Rebuttal.
You say that the Beatles showed their faces in the same way that, to the audience in the same way that the actors in Pyramus and Thisbe in the Midsummer Night's Dream version did. The only thing is, in the Beatles version, it was in modern day. People knew that a man dressed up as a lion was not a lion. So they did not necessarily need to see the face of the person. They did this because they were the Beatles. And it would be pointless for the Beatles to put on a show without showing their face. And it was what the audience would want.
Main point. Hannah.
The Beatles' main point of the Pyramus and Thisbe was for comedy. In the play, Shakespeare intended it to be, the audience took it as a comedy, but the actors took it seriously. The Beatles cannot do something seriously because of their audience would have wanted a comedy. In the play, Midsummer Night's Dream, Hippolyta and Theseus were watching the Pyramus and Thisbe play. Hippolyta states, "This is the silliest thing that ever I heard." Theseus replies, "The best is this kind are but shadows, and the worst are no worse, if imagination could amend them." Hippolyta responds, "It must be your imagination, not theirs." Act 5, Scene 1. Shakespeare intended for the townspeople to take this seriously, and the audience took it as a joke. But in the Beatles, both the audience and the actors took it as comedy.
Jen. Rebuttal.
Alright. The interpretation is not inaccurate, because in the end, both were interpreted by the audience as comedic performances. And Shakespeare wanted the audience to think that Pyramus and Thisbe was funny, even though it wasn't intended as a comedy. It's the personalities of the Beatles which would cause someone to think it wasn't interpreted correctly. The Beatles' naturally funny and comedic personalities turned Pyramus and Thisbe into a comedy for their audience. And the serious airs of the townspeople in A Midsummer Night's Dream gave a serious tone to the play, but was interpreted incorrectly by the audience as a comedy. Therefore, the interpretation wasn't inhibited.
Main point on accuracy. Hannah.
When comparing the Disney version of Mickey Mouse's Midsummer Night's Dream to the play of Midsummer Night's Dream, the events in the movie were inaccurate to what happened in the play. They were under-exaggerated. In the play, Midsummer Night's Dream, Theseus proclaims to Hermia, either to die the death or to adjure forever the society of men. Therefore, fair Hermia, questions you desire, know of your youth, examine well your blood, whether if you yield not your father's choice. Act 1, Scene 1. Here, Theseus tells Hermia that if she does not go by her father's choice of her marrying Demetrius, she will be put to death. In the Disney version with Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck tells Stop. Okay, Donald Duck tells Minnie Mouse that if she does not follow her father's wishes, she will be put to death. Since this is a Disney play, they can't necessarily say put to death because it is for children, and that kind of language isn't necessarily used. So they have to water it down, meaning it hinders the plot development and it hinders the drama of all of what Shakespeare intended the play to be.
Jen, rebuttal.
Although under-exaggerated, the events are still accurate and don't hinder the plot development, especially for the age group that the movie is intended for, young children. It does the same as the play.
Moving on to main point. Jen.
A movie, specifically the Mickey Mouse Midsummer Night's Dream, is perfectly capable of staying accurate to Shakespeare's work, just as a play would do, because the characters' behaviors are completely the same as in Shakespeare's writing and the play. For example, in the play, Hermia constantly tells Demetrius of her affections for him, saying things like, "I am your spaniel, and Demetrius, the more you beat me, I will fawn on you. Use me, but as your spaniel. Spurn me, strike me, neglect me, lose me. Only give me leave, unworthy as I am, to follow you." Act 2, Scene 1. In the Mickey Mouse version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, the same behaviors are portrayed by Hermia, and the audience still receives the same ideas and purposes achieved, same ideas and that were intended to be shown by the play.
Hannah, rebuttal.
So when you look at the Mickey Mouse version of Midsummer Night's Dream and you're trying to show children a play about Shakespeare through something that is familiar to them, it can get confusing to them because you have a different plot line of what usually Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse would be doing. It is not accurate in the eyes of children because, for example, they use Goofy as Puck, and when a child knows Goofy as Goofy and not Puck, that can get very confusing and send mixed signals, or not allowing them to understand the intent of what Disney is trying to do compared to Shakespeare's intent to the play. Disney's purpose was to possess Shakespeare's play Midsummer Night's Dream, but Shakespeare's purpose was to demonstrate and show what lovers are willing to go through and what obstacles they're willing to go through to be with each other.
Main point on authentic. Jen.
Aesthetic.
The 1933 movie version.
Keep going.
The 1933 movie version of A Midsummer Night's Dream does a better job of portraying the fairies than Moonworks' 1999 version of the play. These fairies are an important part of the play, especially in plot development, which is why it is key that they be identified by the audience easily. The 1933 movie version does a great job of making the fairies look different and be set apart from the other characters so that the audience can easily identify them. They use things such as flowy clothing, wings, ethereal movements, and lighting such as bright white fairies in a dark background, so they stand out. In the 1999 Moonwork play, there's little to no indication that the actors on stage are fairies, other than the slightly different clothing that they wear and the movements they use, making it something that the audience must infer that these actors are fairies. The movie's better aesthetic better portrays both these characters, and because of that, the overall plot.
Hannah, rebuttal.
When looking at the 1933 movie version compared to the play, you have to remember the 1933 version is in black and white. So the aesthetic gets lost and it does not do as good as a job portraying all of the aesthetic that a play would, when you can visually see color and light changes and all of that the black and white version of the play does not allow you.
Main point. Hannah.
The aesthetic in the play version of Midsummer Night's Dream is better interpreted, or is better showed through the play than the movie, because you can physically see sets changing from, for example, a forest to a wedding, and you can see characters moving on and off and see different colors, and like Jen said, you can't tell which fairies are, who are the fairies, but you can because of the color changes and the scenes and the characters moving on and off and the movement that they do and such, and the different costume changes.
Rebuttal. Jen.
All right. You say that the aesthetic is lost due to the black and white film. Although in the movie you receive all the physical aesthetic that you would receive in a play, as well as camera angles and scene changes. So there's more aesthetic to help the audience understand the plot, conflict, and character development.
Closing statements. We'll start with Hannah.
Midsummer Night's Dream, the play version, demonstrates a greater deal of Shakespeare's original intent through interpretation, accuracy, and aesthetic.
Jen.
The movie version of A Midsummer Night's Dream does a better job of interpreting the original works of Shakespeare. It is just as accurate, and the aesthetic helps to develop the plot and conflict and characters more so than the play.
Thank you.